Good morning. Welcome. It is shortly after 7 o'clock on this Monday morning. It is the 27th, is it? Yes, 6 minutes after 7. This is the way it is on Sunrise Live, as we do every single Monday, and we invite you to participate in the discussion. You can send in your comments on all the discussions we'll be having this morning at KTN Kenya. You can also do so at Yvonne Okwara. And we will be with Martin Mutua and Otieno. And what a week it has been. And you know, this is the most favorite part of the show. And as you can see, the conversation has already been. Here we are.
Good morning, Yvonne.
These are like the children in the classroom that could never keep their mouths shut.
I mean, the teacher's up there speaking to herself. What are we to do?
Speak
just
to each
get
other
on with stuff. Yes. But we've done our homework, so let's go.
Clearly you have.
We don't need to stand up on the blackboard.
He usually does, you know, the newspaper cutouts. Martin doesn't need to do that because he writes the stories in the paper, so he can remember them.
And you will prompt me.
And I will, and I will prompt you.
But you're part of the discussion.
Yeah, like you keep saying. I always say, and this is my disclaimer, any comments made on this show are theirs.
Oh no,
yeah?
Is that true?
Yes, and they are responsible for their statements.
Out to dry.
Yes. No. Okay. I am joined by editor Martin Mutua of The Standard, editor at KTN, Otieno. So we're in good hands.
And the host.
Just the host, you see? It's a mere humble title. Anyway, let's get into it.
Okay, you're safe, Yvonne? We'll cover you.
I keep doing this every day because I don't want that Land Rover outside. All right. So it's been a very busy 7 days. Obviously, a lot has been happening. But let's start off with the TJRC, which I think you've written quite a bit about, Martin. And there have been some ridiculous statements that have come out as a result of this, by the chair himself. I think the first one that he said that struck me as, just odd was the fact that his name is in the report, is testament to just how unbiased it was. I was thinking hogwash. And then he came out later and said, well, you know what? I don't even believe in this report and, it's not credible. And yet we have pictures of him nicely shaking President Uhuru Kenyatta's hand with a big smile on his face, saying, here is the report, the one that he doesn't believe in.
It's a case of doublespeak, which does not help much. Maybe, like I told you, I think he never sort of fathomed the belief or the idea that he will be part of that report. Because
really,
in terms of the impact that would come up after that, because for a year he wasn't, like I said, he was out of office.
Yes,
he was battling in court to get back to the commission, and. But once he got there, those commissioners had already made their own recommendations with regard to what he was being accused of, and so he was part of the report. So I think the thing is that he has already given it to the president. He was the chair and he led the commissioners. They handed over the report. We need to move to the next phase. Is implementation. The issue is, according to the issues that the way I read the report, they said most of the people who are named there, they were contacted. But when we spoke last time, we said if there are people who are not given a chance to defend themselves, they should be given that alternative chance and be able to defend themselves and give their side of the story. But the implementation process must not stop. It has to move on so that people can know for sure whether we're going to put a closure to this thing. And I think the mechanisms in terms of how they have detailed the implementation is there. So I don't think we need to beat about the bush. We just move on with in terms of how we're going to implement this report, and it should not gather dust in the shelves of the government.
Bethel Kiplagat, who's the chair of this, had just brought this whole thing to a halt in the beginning and insisting on staying on chairing that. Do you think that's when things just started to go awry for TJRC?
Well, I think they derived a lot of power when the report was in their hands. They derived a lot of leverage when it was still their secret to keep. And as we were guided here by Martin, we remember we were wondering why it was not being received at the time it was being proposed to be given. We then realized it's like being served, and it kicks into a certain motion. It has to keep going. Once they did that, it's out of their hands, all right? We don't care that somebody had hiccups and somebody was reluctant. It was theirs to brood over, it was theirs to hold on to, it was theirs to seek leverage with until the day they handed it over. It is now out of their hands. For me, we should not even pay attention at all to Kiplagat. It's a waste of time. This report is bigger than him. The processes that have been kicked off are bigger than him. And he needs to be part of the processes, so be it. But anytime we get into, and you know, this is a typical Kenyan thing, engaging in sideshows. This guy is a sideshow. The job is done. What happens now is not dependent on him. It's not hinged on him. So he's just a guy who wants to have the last word. If people want to give him a platform for that, well and good. But people need to realize it's not about him anymore. And let's not waste time reacting to what he has said. Let him say, he has the freedom to speak. I wouldn't deny him that. I'm not saying he should shut up, but I'm just saying that's not where we should start concentrating on. This thing is out, the process is on.
Okay.
He's not the guy to look at right now.
Right, and speaking of the report itself, were we ever hoping to hear anything new, anything different from what we already had, you know, regarding all of these issues, from the Wagala massacre to what took place right after independence, you know, with the issue of historical land injustices beginning in 1963? Were we hoping to hear anything new? Senator for Bungoma, Moses Wetangula, said all it was a catalogue of everything that we already know to date. Many people saying all they did was just take all the other reports that we have had in the country regarding the Uko murder, Pio Gama Pinto, the unresolved murders, and everything else that's been detailed. It's just a copy-paste. Were we hoping to hear anything new at all, Martin?
But is there anything new that has happened? That's what we need to find out, that we didn't, that was not captured.
Right.
So, I mean, their mandate stretched way back in terms of the time period they were given. And for sure, within that period that they were given, all these issues have happened. So they needed to document them. Were we expecting them to go and fish out for something which is not there? If that has happened, maybe some things had happened and guys were expecting them to have been swept under the carpet and forgotten. That cannot be the case. They were given a mandate. They have executed that mandate. We need now to move to the next phase. Let's stop now pretending to start discussing the pros and cons of that report. No, the issue is what do we do after this?
Okay.
It's very right, because innovation was not their mandate. Creation was not their mandate.
Okay.
Right?
I like that, yes.
People need to be very
It already
clear what their
happened.
mandate was.
Okay.
So it's not about asking what is new. And this is the kind of complacency and laxity we need to share as Kenyans. I would ask you, and what has been done about those things before? One of the things we've suffered is lack of political will.
Right.
Yes.
And just the push to have them done. So if this will be the report that gets things done, we should support it. We should put our weight behind it.
Do you think we have that political will, seeing as the president has been named, his father, who's the founding father, has been named?
My point is, we can't give up.
Right.
We can't just roll over and say, oh, it's one of those things, let's see what happens. So when will it be actionable? We have to say, this is it. We should grasp it and say, this is the one. It's what we have now.
Okay.
Maybe it'll be the one, either by design or by default, that will get us some movement in those terms. Because, you know, sometimes even bad people do good things by default. So we won't just be afraid and say, okay, maybe the people who can make this thing possible are not the ones who are in charge of it. But I just don't like this thing of sitting back and saying, so what else is new? What happened to the last thing? Nothing was done about it. Let's push for this one.
All right. And what is the way forward now? What are the next steps now? We've talked about the report is out. We should now be looking towards its implementation, which is what, Martin?
The implementation process, they are supposed to be, well, I never went I can't recall the entire part of at the end, but there's supposed to be an implementation team that is supposed to take up this matter. And there's a timeline with which they are supposed to deal with these issues. So the government, the report is way out of the commissioners. Now it is part of the government to implement it in terms of the timelines that are set out in that report. So there's supposed to be an implementation committee. That report is supposed to, in terms of what we got there is from the TJRC itself. The president or the government has not made it officially public. That's what's supposed to be done by having it tabled in Parliament. Members of Parliament engage in debate about it, and then find a way of implementing it as per the way it is outlined there, and ensure that whoever is recommended for prosecution is prosecuted, whoever is recommended for investigation is investigated, and that's the way forward, because they have recommended certain people to be prosecuted and they have recommended certain people to be investigated. then the investigation arm must take over the process, and that means our criminal investigation department, the lapses it has and the challenges. I hope they'll be up to the challenge and be able to do their job by dealing with the people who have been outlined there for investigations. And if they merit prosecution, they're taken to court. Then we put a closure to these things.
Okay.
I'm actually looking forward to this report being tabled in Parliament for two reasons. You can see very clearly, this is the Parliament, that if a big issue, if something does happen outside of Parliament, they will stall the discussions, they will stall the process, they will claim, if we haven't touched it, it shouldn't be handled and a decision should not be made. Now this, another reason I wanted to be discussed there, it's still early days in this Parliament. People have not entrenched themselves in camps, and the godfathers and godmothers are not yet taking roots on the subjects. So now is the time, because everybody is a maverick and all these loose cannons and the guys who are still trying to position themselves. I mean, look at how they dress up sometimes in white suits and yellow ties. They want to be seen by the constituencies, and they've got headgear. It's all about, I saw you yesterday, television. So that will help, because right now, the only thing they're clear about is if anything steps up under the name of the president or the deputy, they will fight for it as a party issue. So they still show that we are the majority, we are ahead. But this detail of information such as this, because it goes beyond their party affiliations, now before they're all corralled into separate corners, this is the time to take it there, because information from privileged sources is always entertaining when it comes out. True. There are privileges on the House of the floor. Let them bring this thing out, and then we shall be guided on where to go after that.
Okay, all right. Yes, so some interesting things happening with the TJRC report, but like you say, all the other side shows we should forget about and actually start pushing for its implementation and for the next phase.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right. And that implementation committee, I think, will be very important. Speaking of the National Assembly, which is where this is headed, Martin, I'd like to give you your I told you so moment. Go for it.
And I'll cheer on what? What was the issue?
On the issue of salaries, last week when they were able, to annul that part of the law that said, that the Salaries and Remunerations Commission can cut their salaries. So this is your moment. You have 5 minutes?
Yvonne, it's not about having a moment. It's just about,
Martin Mutua.
It's just about knowing. I mean, this is not rocket science.
No, but actually, he made it clear. But I supported him. You cannot, unless something has to give, you have to sit for these guys. You have to accommodate their nonsenses at this time, because they just have the leverage. There's no magic to it. It's leverage. There's nothing else.
Okay. And I remember you said, do not lose sleep.
It's just leverage.
Parliament is there to legislate. And if they can, by the way, we pay them to legislate. That is their job. It is nothing. It is not supposed to be that we pay them to do something very out of the moon from these issues. Their work is to legislate. And if they can find a loophole, or they can find a way on how they can deal with an issue that is pertaining to them, and it's within the law and within their mandate, they will do it. It's not rocket science. They have tabled this thing. And it has not been debated, by the way. It's going to be debated tomorrow.
Yes.
And they were supposed to have adjourned last week, but since they have not sorted this out,
this is important.
This is important. Very crucial.
Yes.
So,
and here's the thing, because the CIC chair weighed in on this matter.
Absolutely.
And it's in the papers today. I'm not sure if it's the Standard or the Daily Nation, but the CIC is warning personal responsibility for any public officer that illegally tampers with his salary. Of course, the speaker has put him off and told him, hey, who made you policeman, eh?
One thing I'll give credit to Charles. So Charles, at least Charles, he's not given up. He's struggling. And in a proper democratic society, you need to have the voice of someone like Charles there, so that you know what you're doing, you know what surrounds whatever you're doing, and somebody has to speak up for good or for bad, but so that we know all the angles that are in play. In any case, he's got more voice than the embattled chair of the CRC. Someone has to speak.
And they are going to go to court as well. Apparently, they're contemplating going to court to get an interpretation of what that mandate was.
Because
yes,
lovely. Trust me. The MPs are very happy. You do what you want to do. They will show you how they have done it within their mandate. The issue is that they're saying they have the mandate and the authority to de-gazette a gazette notice.
That's true.
So they will. You will have to prove prove that they have done something wrong.
So even if they go and get an interpretation of that mandate, it has already been degazetted.
It will
have been gazetted by the time they go, so
and
be
they will have
overtaken
gone
by
on recess, and they will have gone with their packs in their pockets. So because they have budgeted for that money, by the way.
Yeah.
That money is budgeted
to the T.
Kabisa, they brought in their because Parliament is independent.
Yes.
They have a Parliamentary Service Commission which makes its own budget independent, just the same way the Judicial Service Commission does that. And they factored in that money, and what they're waiting for is tomorrow once they degazette the thing.
And then they go.
They go on recess.
Do you know what
they smile all the way to the bank?
Do you know what they're calling this? They're calling this noise.
I know, this is just noise.
What Charles is saying, what people are saying, demonstrations or what, is just noise. And it's okay that the president will speak against it. I mean, they told him, you do your thing. Not a problem.
But if you noticed, even how the president talked about it, it wasn't with that passion of, no, there will be no increase. You know, he said, Musinigonge sana. You know, it's very, he's being very nice about it.
Not really. They
not
just told
emphatic,
him,
like this will not happen.
But this is about us. I think, like I've always said, I think right now we need to move that argument and take it back to the citizen in respect of, do you now understand the responsibility bequeathed upon you when you're sending somebody to Parliament? This is what Kenyans, and this is why I said, I need Kenyans to feel this pain.
But you know what? I would disagree with you on that one. We have many new members of Parliament. Fine, there's still the old guard from the 10th Parliament. And that is why in some constituencies they said, no. Enough of all these people we've had before. Let's put in somebody new. And it is still those same people who are new in Parliament who are supposed to bring fresh life.
No.
Who are doing that. And I'm now, you know.
You're on the wrong bus.
Okay.
Look at the history of the Kenyan vote. The Kenyan votes out, does not vote in. Do you know what that means?
Okay.
So every Kenyan in that space will pick up his own idea of a frustration. And I told you, in some areas, you'll be surprised what the criteria is to be a good member of Parliament. It's that you came to the funerals. You showed up at the burials. That, for some people, is very important. Do you understand? Kenyans have a habit of voting out, not voting in. So what they consider a measure of your lack of involvement, your lack of engagement, is what they will then say, enough of Yvonne, enough of you, go home. But they do not set up a criteria. They don't set up a standard. Somebody tried to have a sort of a marking scheme. It didn't go too far. Trying to make them sign up to what I will do as a member of Parliament. It didn't go too far. Civil society tried to champion that.
Absolutely.
It didn't go too far. So don't get confused. It's not about that these people went in, they had a clear mandate, there was an expectation on them. These people went in because the ones before them annoyed the voters. So we are still voting out. We have to adopt a culture of voting in.
And decide what that criteria
is for
voting out.
You upset us, we vote you out. Let's deal with the next person.
Yvonne, two things. First, the president, the kind of talk you're saying is outlining in terms of this issue. For sure, you can understand his predicament and his dilemma. Would you expect him to tell the public that, no, let members of Parliament have their pay? Definitely not. He knows that will not resonate very well with the public. So he is just doing a populist kind of utterance in terms of ensuring that he is together with other people because that's what the people want to hear.
But he knows his hands are tied on this issue.
He doesn't even have any hands on this one.
He has no hands on this one. Just like we've now, these people have the leverage, all right? So what
this is not about him.
It's about them. Legs on
this one. In fact, he's a very clever chap on this one because what he's saying is, so this thing will actually go the whole 9 years. Yes, let it go as it is. Actually, let me speak out of turn here. So he has no hands on this thing.
No hands, no legs.
No,
I told you when it comes to the MP's pay, you will not know any member who is a Jubilee. You will not know a CORD. You will not know a Wiper or anybody.
You just know member of Parliament.
Members of Parliament. That is the time they congregate kabisa without dissent.
Do you know what's
unanimous?
Now I was going to say something, but I remember it was off the cuff. It was something, and yes, and off the cuff remarks remain off the cuff. No, it was just a conversation we'd had last week with the minority leader when he came on the show. But you know, off the cuff remains off the cuff.
Okay, for sure.
No. Just journalistic principles.
Okay.
You know, it's not fair if someone says, well, you know, are the mics on? No. Okay, you know, in confidence.
Okay, so, don't do that.
But I've decided, no. Yeah, it came to mind, but I thought, no.
But the only comment
is part of the 49 who will not hear anything from Kalonzo or Raila or Uhuru. That is the fact.
That's right.
That one is
And you
beyond
remember what we said? He was the in-between guy.
Yes.
Now he's got a job to do.
Oh yeah, he came here and he
Did
said
you tell him
no,
that?
yes, he said he's no longer the in-between guy.
So he's on the job.
He's the man on the job.
That's done.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
So done.
That's done. Let's
we
move
move on. All right. So Kenyans were, a little upset, and we're emotional, and this is what I love about us, and we speak out, and we go on Twitter, and we rant and rave, and someone tell Obama. Was what happened, yeah. Just very briefly comment on, I know we discussed this with you, Martin. Yes, it would be an important message if he came through. But there's this whole thing of, and maybe a lot of people are about to accuse me of being an African, that, he's our, like they say, he's our kith and kin, he's our brother, he's our descendant, he owes it to us in Africa. It's all about brotherhood and ties, and he must come, and how dare he not come, and
Please tell me those are not your comments. I'm looking at
No. You should be feeling aggrieved, Mr. Otieno.
My relative is busy, and he's on the job. He's not an in-between guy.
I like that.
He's on the job.
I don't know why these guys are making noises about him. In the first place, he made no promise. Number one.
Okay.
He never made a promise that is broken. Number two, he did not spurt this argument. All right? This whole argument about why he chose not to come or why he's not even part of the argument. It's only Kenyans who have this penchant to argue about somebody who's not even part of the argument. So now we kick up a whole storm. And this guy, like I'm telling you, my relative is busy. And he's going to come and do what he needs to do. What are we fighting about? We need to recognize what his position is.
We want him to come. Because
And right now everybody's speculating. Is it ICC?
Yes,
is it,
I know.
I don't know, our process?
No, in fact, this is what I liked. I saw something saying strained relations between the US and Kenya. I thought,
as determined by what?
I thought, really? Just because it's not coming? I don't know.
Let's not
I don't know if it's our perception of those strained relations or if that really is the case.
We just have a habit of giving credence to rumors in this country. We have a habit of giving credence to speculation and rumors. All right?
But we're reading between the lines, Martin.
Well,
forget what the UN...
it's all right for us to say... It's right for us to say we would have wanted him to come.
Okay.
Would have wished for him to come.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that we get into a whole vitriolic argument about why he has elected to come or not to come, because he did not put it out like, guess what, Kenya? I'm actually deciding, should I swing by, should I not swing by?
What do you think?
I'm going to make a decision in the next 1 month.
Yes.
Who are we arguing with? Why do we argue with somebody who's not part of the argument?
but we told you, and one of his staff told you, choices of consequences. He told you.
And this is the consequence.
You
live
deal
with
it.
Yes.
You like it or not.
You voted for him?
You voted for Obama.
No, for Uhuru Kenyatta. So live with that consequence.
Absolutely.
As a Kenyan.
Exactly.
Right? Okay.
Yeah. So don't try to go where you're not needed. I mean,
don't we have?
I think we can do better things. No, in terms
we
of
have a lot on our plate already.
In terms of the way Kenyans would have wanted is to see Obama here. That is okay. You would have wanted to see him, but he has his own, the American system has its own foreign policy in terms of how it operates.
Right.
And if they can't deal with accused at the ICC, they have to deal with them at an arm's length. That is their foreign policy.
Okay.
You must accept that and deal with it.
Do we have proof, though, that aid from the US to Kenya, that our trade ties and everything have significantly suffered?
No, absolutely not.
Will that...
I would like to hear you say any.
Yes. Because that's the idea. Everybody's saying, oh, you see, it'll be, it's sending a bad message to everybody else.
But they already, like we said, when we were speaking about it, you said it was giving money.
Yes, the US aid, 4.5 billion.
This is what I'm telling you. Let's not join a band of rumor mongers and speculators. If we look at facts on file, go to the Treasury, go to the Ministry of Health, they will tell you there's stuff happening. So when we're going to start here banding things about and saying it gives a bad picture, to who? Mm-hmm. Speculation is just speculation. It would have been nice to have him, but we can't get upset with him because he's not coming here.
And he's not Kenyan, last I checked.
And I think what
he's American. I wish you would understand that. He's an American man.
What is important to note is it is not his personal decision.
Right.
Whether he will step into this country or actually the next country, for all we know.
Right.
Okay?
Yes.
That's the one thing which is not a state secret. Mm-hmm. You don't need to dig into files. You know very well that the president of that country is advised. Mm-hmm. And you know what happens. They're so transparent. Yeah. If he chooses to go outside of that, they'll be flat.
Of course.
And he'll have a situation on his hands.
Of course.
So they don't have the benefit of hopping onto a plane like our chaps here and coming to deal with the flag afterwards. He has to deal with it before.
Okay. All right.
You can say that again.
okay.
I like that particular.
It's a very different scenario. We need to get that sorted.
Okay. Oh. All right. Speaking of...
What?
I'm
Okay.
sure Yvonne doesn't want to go there.
No, it's just, no, yeah, you sneaked that in really well.
What?
Okay, let's move on now. To matters of the AU, I think that is huge, that we must discuss. And I think it's Regina Nyaboke is preempting that, saying, hope you guys discuss the AU. Of course we'll discuss the AU. First of all, 50 years of the AU. Achievements, non-achievements, and Louis has that look on his face. I don't know if I should. Let me start with Martin, because I know you're about to say something. So let's start with Martin.
In terms of
the AU is 50 years, their achievements.
For me, there's very little to celebrate in terms of the 50 years in AU. Well, it has transformed itself from the OAU now to AU.
Yeah.
Well, I hope it's not just transforming in terms of just changing the name and giving it a new name, but okay, a few things they've done in terms of maybe forming the African Court of Justice. They've also brought in the African Parliament, the Pan-African whatever. But to me, we are still very way far ahead in terms of, behind in terms of what we ought to achieve in terms of the unity in Africa. You see the same old, the few remaining dictators who are there. For me, it's like it is the same club of friends and cartels who congregate just to protect their own interests. And we don't have much. We've not seen a lot of transformation in terms of where Africa is going. Instead, it's when you have people who are complaining and they sort of get into that club, it is now about protecting your territory and your turf, so that if anybody would attempt to raise anything, you'd also point back at them and tell them, oh, you see, you also have your own skeletons back there, so you can't talk about me. So they use this so big word in terms of sovereignty and in terms of how you must respect your sovereignty and stuff like that, and forget where we are coming from in terms of moving ahead. For me, like what has been happening in Uganda is something that should have featured.
I know. Wasn't it strange, yes, that while all of that is happening in his country, President Yoweri Museveni was busy giving a speech about how, yes, we are now an independent Africa. And I'm thinking,
What kind of madness is that? And we are supposed to clap our hands and say, yes, he's giving us a good lecture. That's all nonsense. When you are stifling democracy in your own country, you expect other people to be able to support you. That doesn't make sense to me. So it's like moving way backwards. How many of them have a constitutional mandate in terms of the terms they're supposed to
there's
serve?
Mugabe is there. He just signed in the new constitution, which is very interesting. Because
how many times has he been signing that constitution?
No, but you know what? This is what's interesting that I like about it. It limits now the presidency for the next guy that comes in. So he can last there as long as he wants
when
to.
he even gets there, he will still change the constitution. The same thing has also been happening in Uganda.
That's right,
They've changed the constitution to give the president all those time. So it's only here in Kenya we've tried to set a precedent. At least we have 2 retired presidents who are alive.
Right.
And probably once if Uhuru does this term and another one, we will know that he has at least 2 terms to serve, and he will be out of the way. At least we have set that limit. How many of these African countries are doing the same? None. The presidents there have to rule for life and die in office. If we can even have a pope who is retiring, why wouldn't we have presidents? They feel that they own the country, and without this country, it is like they're going to collapse.
That's right.
That AU has failed in that mandate.
The biggest contribution I see countries taking to the AU is more like a projection of our local issue when we have a challenge, when we have an accusation. We still tend to revert to our ethnic cocoons.
Right.
We still do what we're to business, all right? Now we've exported this to the AU table, and we have a cabal of sufferers, and we have a group of people who feel it's Africans versus Europe, it's Africans versus the rest of the world. Guys, we need to bunch together.
Yeah.
It's us versus them.
Yes.
So
our people are being targeted.
What we've done, we've all just taken up our little habits in our little countries and made it an African shared issue. Until the AU becomes a leader in innovation, in collaboration, then we shall have people sitting there who, because of their futuristic arguments, will now be able to weed out these unnecessary points where somebody who's not even championing democracy won't be able to stand up on that platform and speak. And then the issues will not be protecting each other. Right now, all the AU has ever done is to say, you know, as Africans, we have to look out for each other. And that's why even those who have problems in their own countries can speak. So really, we haven't even sorted out our own East Africa issues.
Yes, that's right.
Collaboration is still not yet there. So the AU is just a place for, hey, you know, we're in this together. So let's look out for each other.
And let's talk about the fact that they bashed the West, you know, and said, oh, you know, a lot of everything that's happening is to make sure that we continue to be enslaved to them. All right, all well and good. And then we went ahead to bash the ICC. Now, we always make it seem like the ICC foisted themselves upon us.
Absolutely.
That, you know, they literally tore through our borders, came right to the capital city and said, right. Placed a flag in the center and said, we're taking over.
Not even
that came up, and I keep thinking, the wacky envelope, we took time, we're meant to form our tribunal. We didn't do that.
No.
The members of parliament didn't do that. I don't have a problem, and fine, the ICC has its own issues. Fine, you might want to say that they're biased against Africa, fine. But even then, we knew this, we susigned on to this, and then now we go saying we're making resolutions. What do you think about this and how successful
Nobody came here and put a gun on our heads to sign the Rome Statute. It was signed by this government. Actually, I can recall it's Okwara, who was the then Minister for Foreign Affairs. He's the one who appended the signature on behalf of this country.
Did you see someone saying sorry somewhere the other day?
Nobody has done that.
There was a local dude who said sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry I signed that thing.
Yes.
I shouldn't have done that.
Yes.
In fact, it was former...
It was,
we'll
remember that
gracious, honorable former justice. What was his name again?
Mamalwa?
No. The guy who was at anti-corruption in the end, when they started.
Yes, Aaron Ringera.
Yes.
He was on and said he was sorry for advising the Solicitor General. Yes.
But
this was when he was Solicitor General, actually, yes.
That one, but you can understand is the comments that you were coming, it was against the backdrop that he had, his friends has been taken
but
to
you
the
even
ICC.
recall
But
that envelope, we had politicians saying, yes, take the envelope, including some who were named. Take the envelope, yes, take the envelope.
We are a member of the ICC by choice. We signed that Rome Statute, and we even domesticated the Rome Statute together with the International Crimes Act, which is part of our constitution. It's not anything else. It was brought to Parliament. Parliament domesticated it into our constitution. It's not I never saw any people from the West coming to bulldoze it in Parliament for it to be passed, to be put in our constitution.
Listen,
it was done by the members of Parliament and this government itself.
That situation, that concern you raise, is not too hard to trace. It's not too hard to find the genesis of it. What happens is individual African countries will want to make deals with a European partner, with a Western.
Right.
All right? At the point when it's an individual deal, it looks nice, you will sign up on it. In fact, sometimes you'll sign up because you want to get an edge over your neighbor. You want to get an edge over your next competitor.
Some funding,
and so you're looking for your own way to get ahead. A very selfish motivation, which you can't fault countries for doing because they have to find their own way of thinking they're being progressive. Now, when that bombs, then they look around and say, who else is afflicted? Then they look and say, even if you feel you were taken for a ride, so this guy's a bad guy. So now let's all bunch up and find out who else feels they're bad guys. But that is how this thing came to be. People wanted individual benefits, and they signed up as individual governments because they saw a benefit for themselves. They did not sign up thinking of the rest of Africa. That's not what their motivation was. But now that it's gone sideways, everybody looks around and says, who else is feeling aggrieved? You are. Then we form we form a good band of sufferers, and we go and complain and said, send these guys away. Who are they anyway? Why have they come here and said what we shall do for them?
And even as we talk about, we're now saying and that is the word that in Africa we're now facing east, I'm a little worried because the same dependency we have created for ourselves on the west, we're simply just shifting that to the east. I think it's similar to what you were saying about we vote people out. We don't vote them in. Am I concerned that in the next 10, 20 years, we will turn around on China and say, okay, you guys are not being fair in the way we have these trade ties between us? I mean, is it just simply to move from one suitor to the next?
It is just, these are opportunistic moves we are undertaking. The fact that we have fallen off with the West, then we pretend that we're going to the East, because the East is readily available for us to do business with them. Those ones, for them, it is about interest. If they can be able to
they have a market for their products.
Well and good, they'll be here. That's not the.
And everybody,
will that change in terms of how we've been operating? That won't change in terms of the issues that we are trying to sweep under the carpet. No, they won't change. By the way, we even lost an opportunity in terms of, if we would have wanted, we would have dealt with these issues of the ICC by ourselves.
Yes.
But what happens when thank Martha Karua initiated a process to have this thing
localized.
Localized, therefore, to have a local tribunal. It was shut down.
Right.
Mutula Kilonzo, the late, picked it up again. He tried the same. It was shut down.
They stuck him with that phrase, don't be vague.
Go to The Hague.
The Hague. It was fashionable. It was a nice clarion call.
Because you know what? They thought maybe it was going to affect maybe their enemies or their rivals. But now when it is affecting them, now it is a bad situation.
And here's the thing.
To come back now.
So we're saying now that the cases should come back to the country. And this is no indictment against the judiciary, but can the judiciary try a sitting president?
We shall find out.
And he's Mutunga's boss, isn't he?
No.
Well, okay, fine. Yes, it's supposed to be independent. But let's take it this way. Who's the highest ranking state official? It's the president. Are we sure that the judiciary would be able to sit there and say, okay, sitting president, come to court, let's have hearings, let's have mentions?
I don't think that's where the challenge is.
Capable? I mean, are we capable of doing that, even though they are independent of each other?
Technically, we have achieved that. That can happen. My worry is, will it be a process that we can see to fruition? That's what the worry is. Having somebody stand up at KICC or the law courts is not in itself an end of the process. That, for me, doesn't remain the challenge. That can be possible, but then to what end? Right now, we are at a place where we don't have a history of successes for the judiciary.
That's right.
To that extent.
Right.
So even for them, and I wouldn't even start criticizing the judiciary. I wouldn't even worry about their mandate because it's a first for them.
Exactly.
So I wouldn't put the judiciary up for notice right now. It's a first for them.
And you know, if we had perhaps had several successful prosecutions of other people who were involved in post-election violence in one way or another. Let's put aside the big financiers for a moment that the ICC supposedly deals with. But you know, we have the you and me, the ordinary Mwananchi that picked up a machete and hacked his neighbor. I seem to, if memory serves me right, I think we've only had 2 cases. One was of that policeman in Kisumu. We had that footage all over of him shooting the guys, and I think he was acquitted of that. Absolutely. It was some technicality. I think there was lack of evidence. Yeah.
And who was supposed to investigate? They were the police who are the same ones who are implicated.
There was a bit early to expect.
How do you
so we're not ready for this process to come back, are we? Do you think?
If we were to allow it to come back, it would have been in the sense that we were supposed to set a tribunal that equals the standards of the ICC. It's not just walking into Willie Mutunga's courtroom and now say that you turn it into an ICC process. No, it was supposed to be a special court that to the standards of the International Criminal Court, together with the prosecution as well as investigations and stuff like that. So it's not an easy thing the way we're trying to portray it. It would have been towards those standards. And are we ready for that? If we've not even gotten any conviction, just I think it was only one, the Nakuru one.
Yes.
And how many people were affected? We have had IDPs all over. We even have IDPs up to now.
Yeah.
We have people who have been killed. Like we said, there are people who are women who have been raped. There are people who are lots of people have been affected. Where has the investigations, what have they done so far? We've not seen anybody being arraigned in court and charged, and prosecution gets to the end. How do we expect to get to the key perpetrators and arraign them in any court and achieve any conviction? There is absolutely no way this country can do that. So let's not pretend it can happen, it will not happen. So we have to deal with the situation as per the way we wanted it. We wanted the key perpetrator to go to The Hague. They had The Hague. Let that process go on, let it get finished. Whether if Bensouda proves the case, well and good. If she doesn't, well and good. We will now know that the process is over and we forget about this. But all the same, even when we come back to the local scenario, people are hurting. That's my fear.
Yeah.
People are hurting. Yeah. We are getting into another, we finished one election and we're going to go to another. And there are people who are still in very bad shape. How do we deal with that as a country? That is what should be worrying this government as well. I haven't seen any movement in terms of that. The criminal investigation department, there's no movement. The prosecution department, nothing. So what will you take to the judiciary for prosecution? Nothing.
And you remember the CID is the one that investigates death of people who show up in court. Huh? Was that a very interesting case?
No, in terms of confidence building, how will we build the citizens' confidence?
Yeah.
When right now, we still have people groping in the dark. Just sorting out Angola, Msumbiji.
There you go.
That even can't be sorted. We can't.
And then there was another fresh attack in Garissa on Saturday night.
We can't sort out Angola, Msumbiji. We can't sort out Mulungunipa area. We can't do it. So how much more?
Yeah.
My worry is, where is the confidence of the citizen going? Where is the area that is being worked on that shows the citizen the stuff that can work? The police can work, investigations can work, the judiciary can work. We are still getting all sorts of stories from Bungoma, from Garissa, from the other end. Now, those don't build the confidence of the citizen. They don't. They just add to our worries.
Indeed, and this is a process we want to bring back. Okay, so all of this coming out of the AU summit, and Noah Otieno was reporting over the weekend that there could be some leverage that they would use in terms of pulling out from Somalia and using that as leverage. Obviously Somalia is a hotbed for terrorism, as it is, and we've succeeded where the US failed. I mean, everybody remembers Black Hawk Down and the disaster that was, and then everybody remembers Operation Lindanchi and the success that has been. Do you think this is something they'll be able to sort of use to pull the strings and convince the West?
That for me is foolhardy, because why would you pull out of Somalia? Who will be affected? Will the terrorists hit Kenya, or they will go to hit the US?
They already did it on Saturday.
Yes. So when you pull out, it means you even aggravate the situation. So who will you be trying to twist? You will have to twist.
We're getting sidetracked.
That's what I was saying. That's where AU fails. If AU wanted, they would stabilize Somalia. That should be their challenge. Ensure that the countries that have no stability, they get into those countries, and because they've said they need to have their own mechanism, which is the regional mechanisms. Why don't they put that in practice?
But to be fair, we do have AMISOM, and they took over immediately when we sort of phased out our operations. Then AMISOM took over.
But you shouldn't stop there. Ensure that you have a stable country there, so that your neighbors don't suffer.
Those are some of the huge discussions that we should have seen.
Those are the discussions that should be undertaken. You stabilize Somalia, you stabilize even DRC. You have all those kinds of stuff.
Even in Nigeria,
DRC. In Nigeria, the Boko Haram, those areas, all those stuff. Those are the things that we should preoccupy ourselves with.
Give us something we can say is a precedent. Give us something to double our faith in you. Give us something to encourage us that you actually have a plan. That's all we're asking for. Give us something to chew on.
All right.
But you see, when they congregate and they're only looking at their own interests, then there's no way they'll think about how to deal with those kind of situations.
And then we have some interesting statements that were made by SATA. Okay. So, Martin, you need a glass of water for this.
Where do you want to go with that?
First, he said the AU has no control over us. We say no to this one African passport thing. And then he says he didn't even know why he was there. It was a waste of money and he needed to be somebody else. The president of Botswana didn't even attend. He said it was a waste of time and taxpayers' money. So like you say, perhaps we band together. It was really important for some countries, but not for others. Obviously, for those that
he's insisted that the ICC process must be handled.
Botswana is the only country
yes.
that dissented.
He stepped up. He stepped up to insist the
I mean, but you know, when we have statements like this, and Sata is actually present, but he says it's a waste of money, and then he's there and says the EU has no control. Yeah.
The guy from Botswana.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But you remember 2 weeks ago when that whole nonsense came up about the deputy president going out. But people needed to wait and see why he'd gone out there. This was part of the work he was doing. Prepare the ground for the AU meeting. You can't just jump out of the country without reason. And what they enjoyed was that we'll always get lost in distractions, we'll always get lost in sideshows. We should have focused on what's coming up. Why are we speaking to other African countries? What is he preparing the ground for? And here we are in Addis, and now people are having a light bulb moment, as if it was a secret he was out of the country. It's ridiculous.
Right. Okay, so understanding that that's what it is. But you know, when we talk about the AU and its 50 years, and some people are there and they make these ridiculous statements, others choose not to. What do you think about the next 50 years? What are your expectations of the AU?
If we still have the same crop of leaders, we're going nowhere.
Most likely we will.
Of course, there are those who are supposed to live forever in office, so you will not have much change in terms of that unless they die. So, and we get new guys, and hopefully that they'll not be trying to groom their own children or their own relatives to be able to take over and do the same thing. So if we're going to have an AU which is going to make sense, it's the kind of leadership that we're going to get out of AU. I hope with Mrs. Zuma at the AU, maybe she might try and bring some change in terms of ensuring that maybe systems work. I have believed in her because she, in terms of what she did in South Africa or in putting up structures, she did very well. So I hope, as she heads as being the chair of the AU, something is going to come out of it. But my worry is that she can't do things on her own. She needs all these other characters that have to be there. So she might get swallowed with all these forces.
These statements we like jumping on, like Martin is saying, we're a sovereign country, we're a sovereign state. We want this, we want this.
We're still
but
struggling to
for
prove
me,
ourselves.
it's difficult to have a discussion at AU level and expect innovation in terms of ideas from there. When you drive around the city and you find a foreigner in a parastatal plate car, and you're thinking, we're really sovereign.
Oh yeah.
Why is
self-rule?
Yes. Why is a foreigner in this parastatal car? Some of them now have gotten so much confidence. Even if you get into an altercation with them or then in an accident, you hear their responses.
Yes.
Because they're thinking, what will you do?
Yeah.
I am here for your government. Who are you? Now, when you've got foreigners speaking at that level, we have another scenario coming up. Why is it we're unable to invite international help without these people coming to abuse us as Kenyans?
That's right.
Why are we unable to have foreign intervention without these people thinking in the way that they've come in, they have to trod on us as citizens? Because you see it in the way they behave, in the way they're trying to interact with people. It's as if they come in and the induction they have is you interact with the government and we're in charge, so you're in charge, and do not give quarter to anybody. Where are we heading with that?
But we invite this kind of scenarios for ourselves. Take the case of their two brothers. How did they come into this country?
They were senior CID officials, weren't they?
They even got ranks in terms of a deputy commissioner of police. They were moving with GK vehicles, and even there was at some point I even saw some number plates for the diplomatic whatever. How do you explain such scenarios when you still pretend
we're
that
independent
and sovereign and that kind of
thing? That was violent, but I'm telling you, last month, you're outside a construction site, an apartment building, and the guy who's looking over it is definitely not Kenyan, and he's in a parastatal plate car, and I'm thinking, right, who's a visitor here?
Yeah.
And he's lording over it. How did he get that kind of access?
Yes, and while we talk about foreigners in the country, and everybody is lauding what the relationship we have with China and Japan, and the roads they're building. I think Japan probably in the Kileleshwa and Westlands area, Thika super highway, popular with the Chinese. But there's things we don't realize, and correct me if I'm wrong. The Chinese are investing heavily in this country. They're putting up apartment blocks. They have a hotel, the one that's next to the Yaya Center. I forget the name, but it's one of those Chinese names. Yes, but the name's gone off. But but when you think about that, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with foreign investment. Don't get me wrong. But the thing is, once we invite these people in, they have a foot through the door. That's how it should be. But they come in. And they literally colonize. And for a lot of women, we'll even talk about some of the clothing that comes in from China is ridiculous. I mean, it's like for a 2-year-old. I mean, and yet it's supposed to be for an adult. And and this is, and we're talking about clothes, we're talking about undergarments, but we're suddenly being flooded. If you recall, there was a riot by hawkers in the city who said the Chinese are taking over. Go to Biashara Street. Who's selling you your curtains and your upholstery and your seats?
They're on the streets hawking. Okay, yes. that's okay if that is the kind of
no problem with it.
That's
but
the kind of route the government has decided to take, so that you avoid being lectured by the West. That's fine, but it depends on where you're taking this country, because they have, like you're saying, the Chinese, the Japanese, they have interest. If they can find a ready market and they can find labor for their many citizens that they have, well and good. They will come in and do their business.
Does this take you to the lesson that we had about, remember in history, in high school, when we were learning about colonialism and why they came to Africa? They were looking for raw materials for their products. They were looking for a market for their products.
And
why does this seem to be happening all over again?
For me, it's not a shock. It's not a shock for me, because that's the way we are trying to use certain methods to avoid scapegoats, just as a scapegoat for other issues. So the way we are projecting this, it depends on how we want this country to move forward. So it all boils down to the government in terms of the kind of foreign policy that they are choosing. If they decide whichever country they're going to deal with, fine. But are the interests of the Kenyans being taken into account in terms of all these issues that they are moving forward with? So if we decide that we are going to deal with this country and the other country, what are the benefits for our people? Or are we doing that just to please and despite one country and despite another?
Yes. Okay.
If that is the case, then I think we are getting things wrong.
All right, indeed. Some other headlines, I think, that made that, and you have the newspaper cuttings, so I'd like us to talk about one of those now. And this is about what's happening with Sakaja. Looming storm as Sakaja is given days to exit TNA top seat. This was on Saturday.
What do you know about this?
Well, if he hasn't really relinquished that post, he ought to, because since he's been elected into office, he's been nominated.
Yes.
He's a member of the legislature.
Yes.
Definitely, there's a distinction. You can't be in parliament and also hold an office in a political party.
Right.
Political parties were supposed to be delinked from those who hold other offices. If you're a cabinet minister, if you're a member of parliament, if you're a state officer, you cannot be also a member. A leader in a political party. That is very clear in law. So I don't think why there's any reason to deal with that. Everybody needs to understand where they step. So
I think here's a bigger problem. I think this is beyond just that technical argument, because
I think it's about what happens within the party.
No, right? This is a guy who, for some strange reason, thinks he can now take on his boss, and I think that's.
You think? How so?
Do you think his boss is happy with him? Do you think the statements he's making in support of his boss? You see, this is what happens when you walk into some of these offices and you start hanging out with like types, and they start to encourage you and they start telling you, now you've got a voice of your own, now you can start to say things, and now you can fall out of favor with the people who created you. I don't see him having a very good run in parliament.
Well, it's up to him to cut his own issue. He's in parliament courtesy of the Jubilee coalition. So, well, I don't hold brief for him. I'm sure he can speak very well. He will come. We might invite him to talk. But the thing is, they must draw a distinction in terms of where you are. If a party has sponsored you to parliament, there are rules. You must follow the laid down rules in terms of how you relate with your party. You can't go against the wishes of your party. That doesn't happen anywhere in the world. If you do, then you consider a rebel, and you know the consequences. But as things stand, with the new constitution, there are clear demarcations. If you want to hold party position, you must stay within the party position. If you've been put into parliament, into a position of authority, you must delink and deal with that particular line. There are no two ways. You can't have your cake and eat it at the same time.